Hi everyone, I'm Daniel. I'm one of the coaches at BetterLesson. I'm really excited to talk to you in this vlog about a values-based classroom. This was something that I did in my classroom to really try to create a classroom culture that was owned by the students, was inspiring, was motivating to them, and where they could really make a connection to why the work we were doing in the classroom mattered, not just because it mattered in the work we were doing, but because it matters to build a lot of skills and mindsets for your life. And so one of the things I would say is that a values-based classroom is something that can work in any classroom, any setting. But I think, of course, will require modifications. And each of us is kind of coming into it with like, what are our challenges? What are the reasons why we might actually go into this kind of work? So for me, the challenges were really around a couple of things. One was I really wanted students to like take a lot of ownership of the classroom. I wanted them to, use technology, make choices. I wanted them to self-assess. I wanted them to set goals effectively. I wanted them to work together really effectively and really collaborate, not just kind of sit next to each other. And so I realized when I tried to do things like that, that there were some challenges that would go on when I tried to be like, innovative and use the classroom space in different ways. So one was mindsets. A lot of the students kind of didn't have some of those mindsets or those ideas behind what I was asking them to do. And so, collaboration became really hard because we didn't really have the mindset of we have to really push each other or we have to really ask questions and understand each other from each other's perspectives. The other piece was management. Management could be hard. It's really hard enough as it is, but when you start doing new things or having kids take more ownership, it can be really challenging. And then I think expectations, really making sure that the expectations were clear in each situation that we were going into was tough. So I think all these things actually, they kind of work together, right? If you don't have one, it actually can be the reason. If you don't have this one, it could be the reason. So what a values-based classroom kind of allows us to do is to start to kind of combine some of these things around those central ideas of values. So what is it is we're all familiar with this idea schools have like values and names like that. But I think oftentimes there's not really a sense of connection to what's going on in the classroom. Sometimes we can feel they're a little stale or kids even can say that to us. But one of the key things is that they're not just like these big ideas that are aspirational. True values are really, really good when they hurt. Is the way that I think about them, meaning that they're hard, right? Like they're challenging. They're the things that we're striving for on a daily, everyday grind, but we don't always get there, and that's okay too. And so here at the bottom right, you can see the 5 that I ended up with. But the goal of this values-based classroom is that management, that management, that mindset piece, and really the expectations start to meld together. So those reasons for going down this road, definitely investment and ownership, helping kids to really make those connections to how they're building lifelong skills and helping them to understand, in a very positive way, how those things relate in the classroom. So what it doesn't do is it's not magic, right? Like it's not like we just can pick some values and put them on the wall and that's it, and we're good. It's not the fact that we have values that really is the thing, but what it does, but what it is it really is about using those values to have common language among you and the kids for what the expectations should be, and to really put that ownership on them to follow through. So it's a part of something that can really contribute. So 4 steps for me in terms of looking back, how can we put something like this together? So 1, inventory current reality, select the values, slow rollout, and embed and return. So looking through each of these, in step 1, inventory current reality means, really take a look at what is currently going on in your classroom and creating that culture that feels like the challenge, just like I talked about mine at the beginning. Especially think down to like, what are those tasks or experiences you want kids to have that maybe they're struggling with or that you just want them to at some point. And that will really, really help guide you to know what are some of those values that are the ones you should pick. If students are already absolute rock stars at sharing their thinking or collaboration, that actually doesn't need to be one of the values that you really focus on with them. And so it's like, what's that next step or what's that next level that you want to push them to take that ownership? And so, when thinking about this, one of the things I'll show you is every year I would write a little vision and just kind of talk about some of those things that I wanted kids to do. I mentioned those. And then from there, I can start to really identify and brainstorm what are some of those possible mindsets or values that could be good for this year. So the next step is selecting those values. Once you have this like brainstorm list, I think one, you can vote or co-create them with students and really give them your vision and help them to kind of narrow down like what are the right things for us. That's always a great approach. But even if you select them yourself, that's okay. But just try to select no more than 6. I think that it's really good when there's only a smaller subset of values. Consider new names for old things. I think I showed you professionalism, and I even had one that was called synergy because I didn't want to do collaboration that kind of had a stale taste for kids. So I created that word to really talk about how it wasn't just working together, it was pushing each other. And then really start to think about what are the definitions or examples of what does this look like outside of school, so that we can start to help kids understand these words. If I came up with synergy, you have no idea what that means. And I could tell you that one time, right? But having some of those examples or ideas of what it looks like on the nitty gritty, like procedural level, but also outside of the classroom can be really helpful. So the next step is slow rollout. Once you have your values selected, start really slow. You might just pick one value to focus on for per week until you've done them all, which really allows you to really narrow the kids' focus. So they're just thinking about what does that value really mean and what does it mean to me? Remember, part of this is around, that positivity. So really thinking about using that positive reinforcement, whether it's with Class Dojo or shout outs or tickets or whatever it is that you use in your classroom to really try to reinforce what do those routines and procedures look like in this value. So for example, synergy, if I see students ask a question to one another, boom, I'm going over there, I'm celebrating that with them because they're showing that value. The other piece to that is really thinking about, asking kids, what does the value mean to them periodically, even having them self-assess on the value. So if we had a week, I might give them a, emoji self-assessment where they just have to identify how they did among the values. So again, we're getting them to think about that value and start to build their investment in those words in terms of what they mean for themselves. So creating a shared understanding with conversations and even mindset activities. I love doing things like marshmallow challenge or things like that really help to reinforce some of those things outside of the academic setting. But definitely bringing that all the way into those general routines and procedures, like, having that pencil ready and out is that, that's professionalism, or whatever those connections that we're making are, I think are really important. So last but not least, embed and return. So get feedback from your students throughout the year, align specific moments to a value, and reflect regularly on student assessment. One of the things I did in my classroom was, at the end of each day, we looked at the class ratings, which was actually students would just rate themselves 1, 2, 3 on how they did in each of the 5 values. And I let kids kind of just explain why they think the class was at that level. That way it was really about the class, and that was a really great way to start as well. And so a couple other things too, I talked about how eventually you can start to reinforce it by bringing in specific things around that challenge. Here's the synergy challenge, where we use that idea to really actually give them a challenging problem, a challenging task that they have to do on Storyboard on technology. So this is how it kind of all came together, for me, and really started to connect, how synergy was. Yeah, that was even the procedure of how do we turn and talk to each other, but it allowed me to give them the frame to be able to do the kinds of tasks like this one that I really wanted them to do. So as a next step, I would say check out the strategy online. Think about these 4 steps in your reality, and really think about how values can help you get to a more student-centered classroom.